about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show, 1-877-Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen, and big thanks to Daniel, our producer today. So former President Trump was in Nevada doing the circuit, and making speeches and trying to get votes and being out there. And he had made a very interesting pledge, a very interesting promise, saying that he would eliminate the tax on tips and the money you earn in tips. Well, Las Vegas, there's a lot of service industry workers. And even though Trump is leading in Nevada over Biden very comfortably, he really needs the culinary union. Culinary union is one of the biggest unions that provides the workforce for our hotels and our resorts. And so your valets, your food servers, your hairdressers, not having to pay a tax on your tips can be huge. And I'm mixed on that. I'm actually a little mixed because when I waited tables, my whole income basically came from the tips. And so if I didn't have to pay taxes on that, that would be really, really nice. That would be that would be the biggest break. On the flip side, though, some of these individuals are making hundreds of thousands a year in tips. We're not just talking about a couple bucks here and there. The tips that you make are really substantial because we have learned to how to make that a job that's sustainable because of the tips. Nobody would want to be a dealer or a cocktail waitress or a food server if the tip money wasn't really good. And so, there's, I think, some pros and cons to this. Having worked for tips, I think it would provide amazing relief for those people who need it. But the truth of the matter is people who get cash for tips, it's very hard for the IRS to determine what you owe. And so I've gone to many places to eat or for hair or salons, and it says cash preferred. Why? Because then there's no paper trail. So people could pay fewer in taxes on the tips. So I think one of the reasons why Trump brought it up is it's already kind of a cluster in a seventh, because if somebody says, yes, I only made $5,000 in tips, how do you prove it or disprove it? So you just basically go by that. But if you eliminate the tax on that, I'm under the impression, and I could be wrong, that the government is not getting enough money. They're in debt. They are spending more than they're receiving. So when we're asking for help on the border, asking for help in the hospitals, asking for help in terms of Medicare, in terms of Social Security, and they say, but we don't have enough money to keep Medicare funded or Social Security funded. And then in the next breath, they say, you don't have to pay back your student loans and you won't have to pay taxes on tips. Then where is that money coming from? Then your tax pool or the amount of money coming into the government is starting to shrink. And those individuals who are paying, who aren't lucky enough to get things waived, now have more of a burden. Another thing that could also happen is where certain industries then flip to the tip model, such that if tips aren't going to be taxed, pay us in tips. And so I think there's going to be people that are going to figure out how, rather than saying this is the price point, is give it to us in the form of a tip, and then it doesn't have to get taxed. So it could be a little tricky. And I want people to get the relief that they need. And when I waited tables trying to put myself through school, I wasn't making a lot minimum wage. They didn't pay you minimum wage. You were paid under, I think it was only paid like $2 an hour because you were living on your tips. But the tips were good and the tips were nice. And then I paid my taxes on it. And now I think your bosses are able to, with your tips, calculate it and submit it because the IRS is overseen. And so I guess the culinary union, You would think the Culinary Union was really excited about this because this really speaks to the culinary workers. There's, I think, 60,000 hospitality workers. They issued a statement saying relief is definitely needed for tip earners. But Nevada workers are smart enough to know difference between real solutions and wild campaign promises from a convicted felon. So I think the Culinary Union has already made it clear that they are going with Biden. So, was that a good move for Trump? Yeah. Was that a good move? Again, if we already are not collecting the proper amount of tips or taxes on tips, then I think there's more of a gain, at that point because many tips aren't being claimed. Yeah, I mean, you think everybody's going to be very, very honest, but if they're getting a 5 or they're getting a 10 or they're getting a 20 and they're putting in their bra and then that goes, who's tallying it up and saying, okay, well, I got this amount today, this amount, I got all this money, now tax me. Now, like I said, there's people that make over $200,000 a year in tips. Now that puts them into a higher tax bracket. You think there's not an incentive for them to say, no, I only made 130 just so they pay less? People aren't stupid. If they're handed money, they want money. But my concern is the tip culture has gotten so bad that now it might fuel more insanity when it comes to tips. If tip money is not taxed, then that's what people want. I mean, one, people want tips, but now even more so. And so there might be a manipulation of commerce such that you end up tipping more. I don't know. What is it? Is it Domino's or there's some pizza place where if you tip, they're going to knock off money of your next pizza? Now, that's really nice because they want to keep their workers. That's really cool. But we're losing what a tip is. All right? A tip is supposed to be, look, you did your job. You did it so amazing. I want to give you extra. And, this is in gratuity. I want to show now it's just expected. Like I said, I was in Europe. They were expecting, all right, what tip are you giving? And I gave a good tip, but yeah, I thought it was, wow, thank you. No, it doesn't happen that way. So, Trump is leading in Nevada, so it'll be interesting to see how this works. Usually with unions, they kind of vote in a block, and Culinary's made it very clear they don't like Trump. So we'll see what happens. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our Fantasy Football Pocket Guide for Beginners found on Amazon or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen, and big thanks to Daniel, our producer today. So in medicine, you need to know the body parts, and you need to be able to describe the body parts and understand your anatomy. So somebody may have lips. They may have an abdomen. They may have a right leg. They may have a uterus. They may have a testicle. They may have a cervix. These are established anatomical names. I understand there's a lot of pressure to not necessarily attribute certain terms to their discoverers or their inventors or the scientists that found them. They want to come up with more neutral names. But for the most part, we have a universal language in medicine. So if somebody says that person has cervical cancer, all right, we know exactly where that body part is. We know what cervical is. Now, you have cervical spine of the neck, but we have come to understand what cervical is in terms of the cervix. I think 14,000 people a year get cervical cancer in America alone. 7,000 people die. The cervix is a very, very important part of the reproductive system because of your uterus. The cervix is kind of like the light bulb, where the uterus is the white and then the chrome part of the light bulb is the cervix, which dilates and thins when the baby comes out, part of labor. But a Canadian Cancer Society has apologized for using the term cervix and has called it a quote-unquote front hole. So now this very important body part is being reduced to a hole. Now, this is something women have tried to fight for many, many years and many centuries, where our body isn't about a hole. Okay, we want to get away from holes being descriptors, but apparently in Canada, they're apologizing for not using that. So this is the Canadian Cancer Society. It's run by philanthropist Andrea Seal. And on the webpage dedicated to cervical cancer, the nonprofit said many non-binary people and transgender men may have, quote, mixed feelings or feel distanced from the term cervix. Now, most of the transgender individuals I know have no problem with it at all. They're absolutely fine. You could use the term vagina. You could use the term penis. You could use the term testicle, spine, vertebrae. They don't have a problem with the anatomical terms. But she says you may prefer other words such as front hole. We recognize the limitations of the words we've used while also acknowledging the need for simplicity. Another reason we use words like cervix is to normalize the reality that men could have these body parts too. So a cervix is not a front hole. I would even say the vagina isn't a front hole. Front is this plane. So if anybody has a front hole, it's their mouth. Okay, the cervix is underneath and inside. It might be an internal cavity. I don't understand and this is a cancer society. The very people that need to advocate for cervical cancer in the transgender population and in the cis population, they need to be true to the terms without diluting. They could actually be doing more harm. So if a person walks into a doctor saying, I'm worried about having front hole cancer, the doctor's going to be like, say what? You mean cancer of the mouth? What's your front hole? Your vagina? You're worried about vaginal cancer? A cervix is a cervix. A prostate is a prostate. A rectum is a rectum. What are you going to call the rectum? The back hole? I don't understand. As a doctor, and listen, we take care of people in all communities, and we want to make sure nobody feels distressed. But I have not heard from the transgender community any issues with calling certain anatomical parts those anatomical parts. I mean, a cervix, you need to know if you have, as a physician, if somebody says, oh, I've had a partial hysterectomy. A partial hysterectomy means your cervix is still there. It was a very old type of procedure. many people use the term partial hysterectomy wrong by saying, well, it was a partial hysterectomy because I still have my ovaries. No, if your uterus and cervix are all gone, it is a total hysterectomy. If you still have your ovaries, then you still have your ovaries. If you don't, then you also had a bilateral salpingo oophorectomy. There's another term for that. But if you've had a partial hysterectomy, that means you still have your cervical stump there. And as physicians, we need to know about it because that means you still need to be papped. And if you tell people you've had a hysterectomy, we think it's not there. That's why we still recommend exams, because some people don't know the parts they still have. I had one patient who she thought she had a total hysterectomy, and when I went to take a look, she actually still had her cervix. And she hadn't had a pap smear in years. So, the purpose of medicine is to save lives and to raise awareness. And cervical cancer, every January, we talk about cervical cancer, month and awareness. And we bring awareness all year long because even though we have vaccines, it is still a deadly cancer. And we're seeing an uptick, in ladies and individuals who have advanced stage cervical cancer by the time they get seen. Now that people are getting fewer pap smears, they're getting birth control over telemedicine or over the counter, and they're not going for the regular checkups. Many of them are not then getting screened as easily. So we're finding cervical cancer now at higher stages. So if the Canadian Cancer Society is going to start calling it front hole cancer, you're doing it a disservice. You're doing it an injustice. And you're also embarrassing the LGBTQAI plus community and the transgender community that is not asking for that. I don't know any transgender individuals. All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOCDALI. So the American College of Pediatricians is joining other groups to protect children against transgender performing procedures. And this is a coalition of pediatrician, health policy groups, and conservative organizations. The quote-unquote Doctors Protecting Children have published a declaration urging mainstream American associations like the American Academy of Pediatrics to abandon support for so-called, quote, gender-affirming care for transgender youths. According to their declaration, they say as physicians, together with nurses, psychotherapists, and behavioral health clinicians, other health professionals, scientists, researchers, and public health and policy professionals, we have serious concerns about the physical and mental health effects of the current protocols promoted for the care of children and adolescents in the United States who express discomfort with their biological sex. They say that affirming that sex is a biological characteristic and that medical decisions should not be based upon an individual's thoughts and feelings, including their self-professed gender identity, the groups assert that what is currently accepted as best practice treatments for gender dysphoria is harmful. Now, their view has been disputed by the medical community, which has established that gender is a social construct, not an inborn biological reality, and that validation and affirmation of a person's internal self-identity are in their best interest. And so, and this is probably the crux of the controversy. Is gender biological or is it social? Do men and women exist? Do girls or boys exist? Does your identity take priority over everything else that has to do with your health and has to do with your growth? And so the American Medical Association, which is one of the largest medical associations, states on its website that improving access to gender-affirming care is an important means of improving health outcomes for the transgender population. And I'll talk about that in a sec. That's what they say. They said receipt of gender-affirming care has been linked to dramatically reduced rates of suicide attempts, decreased rates of depression and anxiety, decreased substance use, improved HIV medication adherence, and reduced rates of harmful self-prescribed hormone use. The federal government supports this narrative, Through the Department of Health and Human Services, they support transgender medical procedures for children and adolescents, calling it a supportive form of health care that may include medical, surgical, mental health, and non-medical services for transgender and non-binary people. They say, according to the Office of Population Affairs, research demonstrates that gender-affirming care improves the mental health and overall well-being of gender-diverse children and adolescents. But as we've spoken about on the show, several European countries, UK, Sweden, Finland, Norway, France, have pushed back on the use of puberty blockers, sex reassignment surgery. Fox News is reporting, and we spoke about this on the show, how the UK announced a rollback in the availability of hormone treatments, limiting them only to clinical trials, where you were not allowed to use them on kids under 17 for gender-affirming care. And so seeing these doctors, including this pediatric association, is probably one of the biggest stands yet. And so one thing I see as a gross error by these doctors promoting gender-affirming care and identity is they are assuming the child has made up their mind absolutely, and that decision to be male or female is permanent, when the whole root of pediatrics and psychology, adolescent psychology and pediatric psychology, is how children evolve with their identity. They go through a phase, they go through multiple stages where they may change their identity. That is why these kids evolve during middle school, high school. They try to go with the flow. You know, what did the mean girls say? What did the jocks say? Do I, you know what, maybe I will be a Swiftie. Maybe I won't. I will support this team. Well, I have switching schools, so now I have to support the other team. Maybe I will like this political figure. Maybe I won't. The child and the adolescent, if they are growing appropriately, will evolve in terms of where they feel they want to be and identify as in their society, their community, and then change as well. Like a major, you may identify as a pre-med major, but then you might want to be a business major, or you might want to be an engineering major. It is okay to change. But when you have a child and you think that 8-year-old has the maturity to say, yep, for the next 90 years, I want to be this other sex, you have just aborted all your knowledge and education on pediatric psychology and pediatric growth and development. And it just doesn't make sense to me. I've known transgender individuals who say, look, I identify as a girl, but I started to do the transitioning. I didn't want necessarily that. It didn't work for me. So I'm just not going to identify as either. You could change your mind. You know how many times women change their mind because they take birth control and the hormones are just miserable? Are you allowing there to be that room for that child who is on hormones to say, whoa, oh, hell no? Taking hormones is pretty miserable. And for some, barbaric. You could be putting them at risk for blood clots. You could be affecting their bone growth. It doesn't make sense on the pediatric population what they're doing. And when they say we need to do gender affirming care, if a child says, you know, how many kids, remember we had Teletubbies? So the kid's like, I'm a Teletubby. I had a patient where the kid's like, I'm a Teletubby. I go, you're a Teletubby. Yay, which Teletubby? The red one. Well, nice to meet you, red Teletubby. Do you think that kid still thinks they're a Teletubby now? No. You change. You evolve. That's okay. You could be a prep. You could be a jock. You could be a class clown. You could be whoever you want to be. But just you don't do anything permanent to yourself. And the reason why these medical communities have gone as far as they have is they've used that argument that the kid is going to kill themselves. Well, we're hearing people who transitioned and were in pain from that still wanted to kill themselves. If somebody is really depressed to the point that they don't want to live, is it really all about them not having a penis or not having a vagina? Now, mind you, somebody with true gender dysphoria, that is very distressing and challenging. But is anybody looking at the other causes? Are they depressed because they lost their grandma? Are they depressed because they're in pain? Are they depressed because they're constantly bullied? The school counselor might say, look, if you become a girl, then you're not going to be bullied as much. Is that the answer? Or are they going to get bullied anyway? So, doctors have a duty to use our training and to use established training and established science. And when other groups of doctors say, hey, guys, look, we have some warnings out there. We need you to know about it. We're supposed to take heed and not pick politics over the patient. So seeing doctors say, look, we don't have enough evidence. This could be dangerous. This could be harming kids. And the average 8-year-old may change their mind. Of course, 8-year-olds change their mind. 16-year-olds change their mind. 25-year-olds change their mind. 1-877 Doc Daliah, don't go away.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
That are asking for you to call a body part a front hole when that's not the body part. I mean, vagina maybe, but cervix, that you're insulting the community. And so I think there's all the priority from medicine, from cancer awareness, from screening, from educating people is being usurped by this need to be politically correct and woke. And I'm telling you right now, it's going to hurt medicine and it's going to hurt the community who needs help. You know, I understand people want things to go viral. Let's make this front hole term viral and then everybody's going to have to use it. It's not. Medicine is struggling to be able to make all this politically correctness work because our main goal is to do no harm. Our main goal is to make sure we're not missing the cancer. I have no problem if you are cis or trans, male, female, however you want to identify, I'm going to support you. But you have got to, for the love of God, tell me what body parts you have because I'm responsible for those. If you still have any testicles, we need to know about it because those could become cancerous. If you have a cervix, if you have a vagina, it doesn't diminish who you want to be. You can identify as however you want. But if they're going to take that and change the terminology, students are starting to get confused. And they're like, look, I don't want to insult anybody. It looks like the biggest crime of the century is to misgender. To me, the biggest crime of the century is to miss a cancer in somebody who gender transitioned. That would be the crime. But everybody's so worried about misgendering or causing sensitivity issues that it's getting kind of ridiculous. Now, remember they wanted, was it Johns Hopkins or somebody wanted to change woman with person with vagina? For decades, women have tried to have society look at us as beings that aren't just all about the vagina. And in one phrase, a esteemed university, one of the highest esteemed universities in medicine, completely blew through decades and centuries of progress. Come on. This is ridiculous. Cervical cancer, cervical cancer. If we're going to come up with a new term, come up with something better than front hole. Women don't like to be identified as having holes. Okay? The biggest orifice in the body is the mouth. Do we call it the orifice? Do we call it your super large orifice? No, we call it a mouth. Okay? These are terms. And so, cervical cancer, obviously, the pap smear is one of the best screens. We have multiple things we could do now to even enhance our ability to diagnose cervical cancer early. We have vaccines to help prevent cervical cancer. We urge regular exams. We urge STI screening. We urge any sign of bleeding or pain to get yourself seen. If you have pain after sex, that could be a concern. If you have bleeding in between periods, those could be a concern. But cervical cancer can be very deadly and very concerning. So God bless any medical group that is trying to raise awareness to use the proper terminology. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Hi guys, Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOCDALI. So this headline caught my eye on Daily Mail. How wild beast invasions are killing more people than sharks. And they say an invasion of wild beasts is wreaking havoc across America, with figures showing these are more common than shark attacks. Now, I have seen more and more cases being discussed. Remember, there was that grandma that was walking her dog in her gated community, and they have homes along a tributary in Florida. And an alligator sees the dog, swims across, jumps on the land to attack the dog. She tries to stop the alligator and gets killed by the alligator in front of her home in broad daylight in a beautiful Florida neighborhood. We've seen alligator sightings of alligators just coming right into the house. There's coyotes around where I live. One killed one of my cats. The wild swine, the feral swine, are also exploding. They say wild hogs, an invasive species of pig, first brought to Florida by Spanish settlers in the 1500s, have now been seen in at least 35 states, destroying farmers' crops, tearing up gardens, and attacking humans. Animal trapper Craig Green recalled a terrifying encounter with wild pigs in 2008. He described hiding in his own 3-feet-tall cage, knowing there was no one nearby to save him, until they eventually ran off and he could escape. He said, "I know when they kill you, they'll eat you while you're screaming, and I'd rather be eaten by an alligator." Now, this kind of hits home to me because when we were in Alaska, my husband saw a pig and starts going up to the pig. Like, hi, little piggy. I'm like, what are you doing? That could be pretty damn dangerous. Now, wild pig attacks are rare, but they're saying these are still outnumbering all species of shark attacks. Between 2014 and 2023, there was an average of 5.8 fatal shark attacks worldwide compared to 19.7 wild pig attacks. In 2024, there have been 7 deaths globally from wild pig incidents, and revealed the number of humans killed had climbed steadily over the past 24 years to 172 deaths. So Dr. John Mayer, a research scientist and manager at the Savannah River National Laboratory in South Carolina, said tigers, Indian elephants, Nile crocodiles, venomous snakes kill more people than wild pigs. The wild pigs are certainly worse than bears, wolves, and shark species put together. Now, they say they are nowhere near the worst of the worst, but they are far more dangerous than people believe. Apparently, in 2019, a Texas caregiver, 59 years old, was mauled to death by a pack of wild hogs while outside the home of an elderly couple she looked after. And she was being partially eaten. Ends up dying. So pigs are now in all 67 Florida counties. And you know, I'm kind of, it's an interesting topic because we've become so industrialized. We have so much concrete that we forget that, you know, we have these animals and we have these species. They say the hogs are also posing some major serious threats to our agriculture. They roll around in the dirt on farms to cool themselves. They root around for food, eat crops, and they cause billions of dollars worth of losses to farmers every year. I think the pigs are some of the smartest animals on the planet. They say wild hogs can also doom the U.S. pork industry, which supports 600,000 American jobs and generates $178 billion. The animals in Asia have been spreading a fatal disease for pigs called the African swine fever. It was first reported in China in August 2018 and caused the death of over 1 million pigs. And they said if the disease ever crosses the ocean to the U.S., it could have a devastating effect. So if somebody brings, let's say, a pig that has it and brings it over to America, now American pigs, just like the avian flu, this is like a pig flu. So, you know, I live in an area where we have snakes, we have coyotes, we have black widows, we have venomous and we have, you know, we always have the risk of a rabid bat. Every now and then we hear in Nevada that some bats were found to have rabies. And so I'm always aware that I am in animals' country. You know, we think the animal is in our country. But when my cat got killed by that coyote, and my cat, it was a rescue cat, and even though she was an indoor cat, we still let her go in and out of the doggy door if she wanted to, because, you know, if she was used to being outside, they want to get their little bit of outside, she would always come home, same time, whatever. And these coyotes were hungry, and one just ate her. And I'm devastated by that. I still, I every time I drive by I have to see the place it happened every day. I go in and out of my development. But we're living in the desert. I live in southern Nevada, and my home was built, you know, by the edge of the city in the desert. I show you guys the tarantula march and the tarantulas that come in. They don't care that we moved in with our houses and all that. This is the tarantula's home, and they're going to still live there. They're going to be stubborn. Remember, these animals, all they have to do 24/7 is figure out how to survive. And so I really think we need to start having a more education campaign, and all of us should have some sort of a animal protective weapon on us, so that if we do get attacked by an animal, I get so fearful of these kids being mauled by dogs. When you hear of these pit bulls or Rottweilers or these animals that think that that child is a threat and then mauls the child to death. You know, we are surrounded by animals, some of them domesticated. Some of them who we think are our little puppies, our little babies. And these are things that are you know, not very caring about the human species. And it kills me that grandmother who was walking a dog didn't have a knife on her. If she had a knife on her, she could have stabbed the alligator, thwarted that alligator, hopefully to leave them alone and live. And the average human does not walk around with a weapon. Now, I don't want bad people having weapons. I don't want those with severe mental illness, and I don't want to see people stabbing each other on planes and trains and all that. But if you're going to be outside and you're going to be in the wild, or you're going to be walking, or you're going to be, I really think we need to have something on us. When you scuba dive, they teach you to have a knife on you. You always have a knife on you when you scuba dive. Because if a shark comes up to you, at least you could fight back. You have a knife strapped to your leg or strapped to your belt. It's just common sense. We've become so anti-weapon because of the criminal elements that we forget certain common sense. And we don't know how to protect ourselves. If a rabid dog decides to come at me, what? I'm going to swing my purse at it? I'm going to spray some body spray? I need to be able to grab something from my leg or from my waist and stab it to get it away from me, or to stop it from attacking something else. But we just take things for granted. That man who was walking his dog in Philly, and two people come up to him to rob him. He's like, but I don't carry my wallet when I walk my dog. And they just point blank shoot him twice in the chest. We need to give society a different sense of, you mess with us, we're going to fight back. And you're starting to see that with home invasions. You're starting to hear in the news, somebody invaded a home and they got shot. Word needs to get out that if you try to come into my home, you're going to be shot. Somebody was in my home. I grabbed the shotgun. I told him to get the hell out. I was getting ready to fire a warning shot, and thank God they left. But if people are assuming that the average person has no weapon at all, that all they'll have is a little nail file at best, you're going to be a victim. And these wild animals can't stand us. Look at what happened with that bull who tried to escape the rodeo, jumped out into the crowd. I think there were 4 people that had minor injuries. But these animals, they don't care. It's just something that we need to kind of be a little bit more understanding of. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH, don't go away.
Considered by most, optimized curcumin is one of the few bioavailable and highly absorbable curcumin products on the market. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch. Since most chronic diseases have inflammation, our optimized curcumin seems to be a perfect addition to any nutritional program. It makes sense to me that preventing or reducing inflammation is a key component to our overall health. The Mayo Clinic found that curcumin can decrease swelling and inflammation, has antioxidant properties, and research suggests that curcumin can prevent cancer, or at least slow the spread of cancer, and in many instances make chemotherapy more effective. It protects our healthy cells even from radiation. TotalWellness.com, where we help you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World, for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.